Hi students, in this video we're going to talk about how to revise the paragraph critique. A lot of you guys have some great ideas here and you did a really good job here, but let's just make sure to understand specifically how to do number 2 and number 3 correctly, which is deciding on which ideas are logical, which ideas are not, and why. The most important step here, students, is that 1, you have a quote before you analyze it, and 2, that your quote is actually long enough and has a link, like this one. So let me give you an example between a good one. So this is good. This is a student example, and this one right here is good. And I'm going to show you guys here. I'm writing my comments. And this is actually an example of not so good because it's a very short quote. Needs to be improved. Why? So let's look at the first quote. All men are born equal, but society corrupts them. Here, there is a link between people being equal and society corrupting them. So if your paragraph or if your quote that you're analyzing doesn't have a sort of link, it's actually not long enough because you can't really argue if it's logical or not. For example, look at this one. Men are capable of unjust actions. So what's next? So we actually have to go back to the quote to see if we can make this longer so that we can analyze if it's good or bad. So let's pause the video right now. And I want you to look at your quotes meanwhile. Do you have sort of a link here between the first statement and the second statement to see if it's logical or illogical? So I'm going to go back to the primary source and I'm going to click right here. So I'm looking for the quote, men are capable of unjust actions. Oh, here it is. Okay, see, there's a way longer quote that I can include that has a link. Men are capable of unjust actions because it is in their interest to do them, and they prefer their own satisfaction to that of others. Okay, this is actually a good enough quote, a long enough quote, so I can analyze it. So let's copy this, go back, go to the bottom, and include a longer quote right here. So I would say, in his article, he also argues, oops, I'm just going to pause this and do this really quick. So now I have a quote that makes sense. Men are capable of unjust actions, link, because it is in their interest to do them. And, so this could be like if you're making a formula, this could be like plus, they prefer their own satisfaction to that of others. Okay, now I have to start thinking, is this logical? Do people act in their interest? Do people do unjust things when they are selfish and self-interested? Let me think. Yeah. So the next thing I would have to do is give an example. In this quote, first I have to explain it. In this quote, Montesquieu argues that when people are self-interested and selfish, they tend to do unjust and bad things to others. For example, so then now I can say this is logical because throughout history we have seen, now I have to think about a historical example where this happened. So when people acted selfishly because they were self-interested. So I have to pause and actually think for a second. So I thought about it and I actually want to give a personal example. This is logical, so I'm going to say because we have seen there are several high school and college students who cheat on exams to do well and improve. To do well and advance themselves. Who cheat on tests to improve, excuse me, I'm blanking out here, to get better grades and thus act in their self-interest. And so this is a great example of this logic that I also give an example of how one person can do the same thing, and it makes sense. But the example on the bottom here, there is a movie called Freedom Writers, and it's about how a group of kids get discriminated, is not actually a great example of this logic. It might be a great example if you're talking about discrimination, but it's not talking about how selfish people do unjust things. So I would actually have to delete this as I go on. So, students, this is an example of how to improve your critique by what I just did right here. So, a lot of you should right now pause the video, go back to your quotes, see are your quotes long enough? If not, make them longer. Find these links. You can even put them on your quote, that's fine. At least I know that you're understanding how to do this. And once you find a longer quote, then give me an example, a personal or a historical one that can prove or disprove your quotes. Do that for both the blue and the red parts. All right, get started.